We have a very interesting keynote that is coming up from Professor Porter. In fact, we have been talking about corporate social responsibility in India, but if there is one person who has actually done something on CSR plus, or where he's actually saying that there is something like creating value for society and how it can be done through his concept of creating shared value, then there is a man called Michael Porter for it. In fact, without further ado, Professor Porter, can we have you up on stage for sharing your thoughts on creating shared value? Professor Porter.
Okay, so thank you all the other speakers for very interesting thoughts and reflections and stories about your company. I hope all of us here are learning, at least I am, about kind of these wonderful examples that we have and the real live, on-the-ground work that's going on in India to start to, raise the strategic insight and focus in companies here. And it was very, very exciting for me to hear that. I've got a lot to learn about what you all are doing. And that's why coming every 14 years isn't quite enough. We need more HBS cases on you. We need more learning about what's happening here and the transformation that I think is starting to warm up and take greater vigor and speed in this country. And so thank you for everybody that's participated in this session. What I want to talk about now is a body of work that builds on everything we talked about this morning on strategy, as we'll see. But it starts to take on another really fundamental issue for business and for societies, and that is what should be the role of business in society, in social issues, in social problems. And this issue is important everywhere in the world, I can tell you. But I think there's no place where it's more important than here. I mean, you drive around the streets here, and you see everywhere how important this issue is. A number of the speakers have talked about it. There's so much to be done here. There's so many societal needs. There's so many people that are not enjoying the fruits of the modern society and the opportunities we have today. It's everywhere. And what I found, I've known this for years as I've met many of you around the world and at Harvard and elsewhere. I mean, most business people in India really have a social conscience, if you will, that's very well developed because you've all grown up in the kind of society that India is and with all the needs that are present here. And so I think all of you have a very strongly held understanding that this really matters. I mean, we in our country, sometimes people, don't even think about this stuff. But in India, you have to think about it. You see it every day. But the question that I've been fascinated by is, okay, what is our role in business to deal with social issues and social problems? Do we have an obligation? Do we have a responsibility? How could we be effective? I mean, traditionally, business did business, and social stuff was done by government and NGOs. That was the division of labor. That's traditionally the way thinking goes about dealing with social issues. That's not our job. In fact, a very famous economist, Milton Friedman, once said, the social responsibility of business is to maximize their profits. And business needs to stay out of this. It's somebody else's job. I personally concluded that, frankly, is, with all due respect to Milton Friedman, that's just wrong. Maximizing profits and thinking that that's separate from social impact is simply a misunderstanding of how the world works and how competition actually works. So what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes and talk about this body of work that I've been involved in now for probably 10 or 15 years. But the kind of big paper on this topic was published in 2011. And the paper was called Creating Shared Value. And the purpose of this body of work is to help all of us in business think about what our role is in society and how to play that role effectively, but how to see it differently than most companies had seen it. So let's talk about that over this session. And the reason I got interested in this topic was because I was seeing all over the world, including in America, this incredible set of challenges the world is facing. And again, you all know them very well. You've grown up with them. In the US, we're understanding them more recently because of the kind of society we've had and the prosperity we've had and the history we've had. But in America, we're understanding more and more. Look at all these challenges we have as a society. A lot of people without skill. I mean, not as many as here. But a lot of our citizens actually don't have enough skill to participate. They've got all kinds of issues of health and housing and homelessness and all kinds of things in America. And I think it kind of took a lot of us by surprise and a lot of business leaders by surprise to see that even in America, not just in an emerging economy like India, we have a lot of problems. And what we're finding is that the traditional institutions for dealing with those kind of problems are just not able to do it themselves. Government just can't take on all these problems and deal with them. There's not enough money. There's not enough tax revenue. There's not enough effective people working in government to be able to deliver all the services that are needed, And so what we've come to understand is government can't do it by itself. The NGO community, 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we didn't have NGOs. They were very rare. Now we have a whole huge industry of NGOs setting out to try to deal with important social problems. Some NGOs focus on water, some focus on women, some focus on, all kinds of things. There's lots of topics out there, and NGOs have grown up. This is a new institution in society that didn't used to exist in the scale that it exists today. And, there's more NGOs than ever. They're raising a lot of money, but they can't solve these problems either. They don't have enough resources. I was visiting some programs yesterday here in Bombay or Mumbai that were focused on children that had tremendous needs because of a variety of circumstances that they had found themselves in for no fault of their own. And there was and there were wonderful NGOs that were doing programs to serve these needs. One of them was a program to help educate and improve the circumstances of children that were children of migrant workers that were in this city because they were working on construction projects. And they couldn't go to school because they weren't from this state, so they didn't qualify for the school. So we have these kids, and they're here, and there was nobody to take care of them and make sure that they had nutrition, they were healthy, that they were starting to build some educational skills. And these NGOs have cropped up in India, lots of them, to deal with all these tremendous problems. And I was so inspired by what the amazing people were doing that were running these programs. But at the same time I was so inspired, I was also sad, because it was clear that the 30 kids or the 40 kids or the 50 kids that they were helping, that was a tiny drop in the bucket of how many kids needed help. There just wasn't enough money and wasn't enough people to deal with all these kids that needed help. And so NGOs are struggling. There's just not enough resources. I think what we're starting to understand is that government and NGOs can't do this alone. Business, us, we are the only institution in society that can actually create wealth. A business creates wealth when you develop a product or a service that meets a need, a human need, a societal need, a consumer need, and you figure out how to do that at a profit. When business does that, when business is able to make a profit meeting a need, which is what all of you do, wealth is created. Because if you can meet a need and a profit, you can reinvest, you can grow, you can meet more needs. You can hire more people. We've looked at, every big sectors. How do you do shared value in mining? How do you do it in insurance? How do you do it in banking? How do you do it in lots of other fields? So what I want to do today is give you a start at understanding this philosophy. But what I really want is I want every single company in this room to rethink its role in society and rethink what you're doing. And not necessarily stop what you're doing today, but I think you can be much more powerful. I think you can have much more impact. I think actually business should be just as important in government as in transforming India. As we heard from some of the earlier speakers, that needs to happen. We got to do it. We can't just sit back and say, oh, government, you do it. Or here's a little money, NGO, you do it. We can't do that. It's too important. And that won't work. We need to think differently about what our job is. And that's the concept of creating shared value. Now, how have we in business engaged in society historically? Well, the initial effort was philanthropy. Most of you give money. Personally, you give money. Your companies give money. You give money to worthy causes. There's a lot of worthy causes in India. We give money. That's a good thing. Everybody in this room, keep giving money. I do. We all do. It's part of being a citizen. We contribute to society. We give money. We support things that need supporting. That's part of our role. But what we have learned is a couple of things. First of all, many companies don't do philanthropy well because they're unfocused. Too often our corporate philanthropy programs, we give a little bit of money to 100 different organizations, and for none of those organizations do we really move the needle. Our corporate philanthropy is much too fragmented. We need to focus. We need to find the few issues where we really want to put some resources and maybe even some volunteers from our management teams to go out and really make a difference on whatever issues we decide we really care about and we think we can move the needle. We got to keep doing philanthropy. We need to do it better. And I've actually written a whole paper on strategy for corporate philanthropy. And I brought a few copies I'll leave here for anybody that's interested. We can do philanthropy a lot better. And, you know, I never thought I would be doing this field, but I work with a lot of corporate foundations these days and sort of guide them on how to think about this. But we can do it better. Keep doing it, though. Keep doing it. Over time, however, most companies in the world have realized we've got to go beyond just giving a little bit of money. We can't give huge amounts of money because we have shareholders and we got to report good results, you know. So we can only give so much, but let's do it better. But we got to go beyond that. We got to have a bigger view of our role in society, and that's when the idea of corporate social responsibility came along. This has been multiple decades now. Most every major company has a corporate social responsibility program. You know, a lot of companies have corporate social responsibility reports. I get these things. I get probably one every day. And you read these reports, and the company talks about all the things it's doing under the umbrella of social responsibility. And this slide talks about what some of that is all about. It's about compliance. It's about following the spirit and the rules of the law, meeting standards in the community. A lot of companies just don't, they're tone deaf. They don't understand the standards that communities have for them. And they get into trouble, and there's scandals. And people have ethical violations and corruption. And it casts stones on all of businesses when companies fail in that way. And so CSR is really a systematic way of raising the standard by which companies engage with the community and with society. Compliance, good citizenship, participation, involvement in the community. Taking ownership of what's going on, you know, in the communities in which we operate, in the neighborhoods where our facilities exist. Not just kind of staying inside our walls, but actually sort of reaching outside and being sensitive to what the needs are in the community and trying to be helpful. Sustainability is a big theme in corporate social responsibility. The idea that we shouldn't destroy the environment and the future in order to make more money today. And a lot of companies have raised the bar in terms of this whole idea. Recycling, a more sustainable view of environmental impacts. That a lot of companies are doing what they can do there. And that's been a big step forward. Corporate social responsibility is good. We need to do more of it. We need to be more disciplined about it. We need to be more systematic about it. There's a lot learned, there's a lot known now about how to do this well. But the problem is that this, as important as it is not going to move the needle either. Just like we don't have enough money to give enough to deal with the big problems, you know, in India. Nor can corporate social responsibility alone really make a huge difference in, the biggest problems facing the country. We've got to keep doing it. It's important for our reputation. We have to build the reputation of business as caring, as engaged, as part of society. That's our job. And too many businesses are seen as a problem and causing problems in society rather than part of society. So we got to keep doing this. It's critical for our reputation. Our employees expect us to do this. The next generation of employees wants us to be part of society. They care. I mean, I can tell you, my daughters who are 20-somethings they are completely focused on all the problems of society today that are going to affect them for their entire lives. They have a different view. They don't want to work for a company that doesn't care about this stuff. If we want the best people to want to work with us, if we want to motivate our employees to be part of our company, we're going to need to take this on as well. Okay? So we got to keep doing this. We got to do it better. But this is not enough either. This isn't going to change India. Just like philanthropy from us is not going to change India. We just don't have enough money. That leads us to looking for, okay, if business wanted to fundamentally change India, from a societal standpoint, how would we think about that? And that's where we came to this idea of creating shared value. These things, philanthropy and CSR, are about things businesses need to do on the side. Okay? Creating shared value is what business needs to do as a business. And what we've come to understand is that actually every single business has the opportunity to actually touch and influence major societal issues. They're going to be different in every company. An insurance company is going to have different opportunities than a manufacturing company, is going to have different opportunities than a healthcare company, is going to have different opportunities than a retailer. Every business touches societal problems and needs in a different way. But creating shared value says wherever we touch society, wherever it touches us as a business, we have an opportunity to not just give money, to not just have a good compliance program, on CSR, but actually to use the business itself to actually impact a social problem. And what we find is that very often that's not charity. It's actually great for the business. It's actually great for the business. In fact, what we're finding is some of the best ideas and opportunities for improving corporate performance and creating unique new strategies come from this. From having a broader view of strategy that includes influencing and impacting societal issues and problems. That's what we call creating shared value. Why is creating shared value so important? You take a company like Nestle. Nestle, Nestle well, and Nestle's been in India for a long time. They're very famous here for the so-called milk districts. And the milk districts have to do with working in a community and working very closely with all the dairy farmers, people that have cows, milk cows, and sort of organizing this whole milk district, working with them to improve the health of their animals, working with them to minimize the environmental impact of the cows, on the, through the manure and all that can, pollute, okay? And Nestle's kind of built this whole relationship with these milk producers in India and many other parts of the world. And the net result of that is they have much more efficient supply chain. They have much better quality of the product. They have a consistency of output of raw material. And, milk is a huge input to virtually every single product they have. So actually, the milk district is first and foremost a way for Nestle to run its business a lot better. And they have a tremendous boost in efficiency and profitability because they do it that way. rather than just waiting for whoever shows up with milk. Taking an active role in working with all those dairy farmers in a community. That is shared value. Because that milk district is transformative for the community. The incomes of the farmers go up. The quality of the environment in that region or in that village or in that area goes up. Housing and infrastructure improve. And so the business, in its own self-interest, is taking a broader view, in this case, of its supply chain. And the net result is the company wins, but the community wins. That's shared value. It's using a business model to affect society, not a charity model, not a PR, CSR model. Okay? That's the concept of shared value. What we're finding is that there's no conflict between business and society. There's at some level a fundamental synergy. Having less impact on the environment actually makes the business more efficient. Uses resources better. Reducing, carbon emissions makes the company more efficient, because carbon emissions come from wasting energy. What we're finding is more and more issues. Taking on, as a company, a skill development program so you can hire the people you really want to hire. That's not a cost for the business. That actually improves the profitability and sustainability and retention of the business, and the employee retention of the business. That's shared value. On issue after issue after issue, wherever we touch society, we're now learning that if we approach that from a shared value perspective, it's actually great for the community, but it's great for the company. Now, we've had phrases in the past like triple bottom line and so forth. And those were wonderful dreams, but we had no playbook. It was just happy talk. Now, I think we have the playbook. We know how business impacts on social issues can actually make our company better and make our community better. And where we make our community better, that also makes the company better, because we have more consumers. And we have better employees. We have all the things we need get better. That's shared value. Social needs represent the largest unmet needs in the world. Health, decent housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If we want to grow, if we want our markets to expand, we've got to take on the biggest needs. We can't just serve the customers we've always served with the stuff we've always provided them. Where we have social deficits or environmental impacts, it doesn't just create costs for the society, it actually creates costs for us. If we waste packaging, we're wasting money. It's not just the packaging, it's not just the sustainability of the packaging, it's actually our money. We're learning this over and over again now. Business didn't understand this. We thought somehow the social stuff was for somebody else. We didn't have to worry about that. The more we learn, the more we find that if we actually worry about it, it makes us better. And by the way, it creates this positive reinforcement between business and society. We need a positive reinforcement rather than just sort of a neutrality. CSR is fundamentally about doing no harm on society. But shared value is about creating value in society, but also creating value for the business. But it's not simple, because every company is different. Every value chain is different. Every product is different. This has to become part of strategy. See, this isn't soft stuff. This stuff is core to strategy in the year 2017. And it's going to get more core over time. What we're seeing is that there's a new kind of relationship for where markets work and where markets fail. Economists, of which I am one, have taught us that markets fail a lot. What we've learned over the last 20 or 30 years is markets actually fail a lot less than we think. It was the ideas that were wrong. It was not the market would work. Markets really work well for reducing pollution. Whereas the traditional economic thinking is, oh, you can't, there's externalities, companies will pollute, you have to viciously regulate them. Right now, we're finding that companies are regulating themselves on pollution because pollution is waste. It's poor technology. It's excessive cost that is unnecessary. And if we eliminate that, we make our business better. We don't need a regulation. We should regulate ourselves. We're breaking down a lot of the traditional thinking about the relationship between business and government, social and business, around the concept of shared value. Now, I just want to take a few more minutes and say, in terms of creating shared value, there are really three big opportunities. One, your product, the customers you choose to serve. Your product can be an instrument for dealing with a societal or social problem. And you can find those customers who now are unserved or underserved and find a way to reach them and expand your market. We're seeing that over and over again. That's number one. Number two is the value chain. We're rethinking the value chain. How we do logistics, how we do packaging, how we think about emissions, how we think about dealing with our employees. We're rethinking the value chain with a shared value perspective. And what we're finding is that companies that actually think about the local environment supporting their business, the ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, are becoming more efficient and more effective. So that's not just the role of government to worry about that. It's our role to worry about that. This presentation will just give you a few examples. I mean, this company's had more impact on water than any NGO. Than any NGO in the world. A company, one company. Because it's got a shared value model. Its business is to save water, to use water effectively, and to help farmers use water more effectively. The most water in the world is wasted in agriculture. And this is a company that's actually solving that problem. And it's scaling and scaling and scaling. And the NGOs are just begging for money to try to do a little bit more for these few people. Okay? This is business as power. This is just one example. You all know this company. In terms of the value chain, again, these slides will be posted. Please look at them. But there's all kinds of new thinking about how to do the value chain better. Resource efficiency, better training, better recruiting, minimizing unnecessary logistics, and so on and so on. You know, here's another one of these great Indian organizations that's reimagined how to provide care for cataracts, is the most famous medical problem, which have dramatically reduced the cost and substantially improve the quality of the outcomes that the patients are getting. And they also have kind of added a little bit of a sort of philanthropy model in the middle of their shared value strategy to actually be able to provide free care to quite a few people that need this service in India. And, you know, again, the impact that this company has had on cataracts in this country is epically bigger than government's impact. I mean, government can't do this. An NGO on cataracts can't do this. Only a business can do this. But they've got to build it into their business model and use the skills and efficiency of business and the innovation ability of business to actually address in a fundamental way some of these critical problems. In this case, a health problem that a lot of Indians have. That's shared value. You know, and here's a little example of a Japanese tea company. It's not such a little company. It's the largest tea producer in the world of green tea. And, you know, they were facing problems with supply of tea leaves, and if they can't get tea leaves, they're out of business. So instead of just saying, oh, government, you worry about this, they said, okay, let's think about it. What can we do? And it turns out they can do a lot to kind of regenerate the agricultural sector in Japan and get some young people into agriculture and equip them with skill and financing and guaranteed purchase contracts, which really created a really big improvement in both productivity, but also in the health of the agricultural community around them that they depended on. This was not charity. If they would have not done this, they would have gone out of business. It's not charity. It's a new way of thinking about business. And that's shared value. We have an opportunity in business to turn the tide on many of these societal issues. But we got to put them in, we got to see them differently. It's just some pictures. Here's another company here that's, you know, tackling some really important questions in building the ecosystem around their business, creating shared value. Shared value is part of strategy. You've got to figure out where you're going to play in shared value. You've got to figure out what societal issues you really must address for purposes of your business as well as the community. This is Nestle's choices. Shared value is a journey. A company called Walmart that you've all heard of and that has presence here. This company was the pariah of US business. Everybody hated Walmart. Everybody thought Walmart was exploiting its employees and ruining the businesses in the communities in which it was operating. And for many years, Walmart just stepped back and said, my God, we're creating all these jobs. We're providing low-cost products to people. We're doing everything a business should do. There's nothing wrong with us. But they still got criticized and they had lost opportunities to engage better with society, which actually turned out to create tremendous business opportunities. So, you know, these are some of the things Walmart is doing. They've really started over the last 4 or 5 years. And their business is thriving because they've woken up to the opportunities they have to engage on societal issues like health, like financial services, like local sourcing, like energy costs, like logistical costs, water, packaging. All these things have created billions and billions of dollars of cost savings for Walmart. You know, and their management team says, oh my God, how did we miss this? We saved $10 billion last year in energy costs. How did we miss this? We were in a bubble. We didn't understand that these connections with issues that are societally important are really important for our business. We were in a bubble, a business bubble. And, you know, I think Walmart has a real shot of giving Amazon the fight of its life. Now that Walmart has integrated digital and physical retailing. So that'll be fun. I think it's time for Walmart to get for Amazon to get some real competition. Then we'll see how good they really are. And I think Walmart and a few other of the best retailers are starting to put the digital and the physical together, which is better than either or. Okay? I'm very, very proud that 2.5 years ago, we talked the editor of Fortune magazine, Alan Murray, who is a very old friend of mine. We persuaded Fortune magazine that they needed a new list. That the Fortune 500 was great, but that was old. And that ranked companies based on revenue. How big are you? And of course, we business people, we love to have more revenue. So it's not that it was a bad list, but it wasn't capturing what both Alan and I believe is the most important thing now happening in business. And that is creating shared value. So you see this list. Every year, 50 companies are chosen. You can't be on this list every year. Unless you do something new and different, then you can get back on it. These companies all are billion-dollar minimum companies, so this is substantial companies that have demonstrable impact on a major social issue, or two, or three. And that impact is having a substantial impact on their business at scale. We've had some Indian companies on this list. Jain Irrigation was on the first year. There's been a few others. But, you know, given your environment here in India, given the circumstances in India, given the massive numbers of things that need to get better in the society, in the community, among people, among all these issues that we've talked about this morning, Indian companies should dominate this list. So that's my charge to everybody sitting in this room. Let's not wait for government. Let's understand that these societal needs that we live in the middle of are, in many ways, our greatest business opportunities. If we can learn to deal with those things here, it's going to help us compete globally. Because some of these same problems we have in India exist everywhere. Let's start down a different path. I got to say this, and I'll get in trouble, but I'm going to say it anyway. The 2% rule isn't the right approach. The idea that we should be thinking about business's role as doling out 2% of our revenue, I won't call that a dinosauric way of thinking, but it's backward. We've got to find a way to get our thinking beyond just giving. We've got to get our thinking towards engaging as a business. And just one more sentence, and then we'll open it up. Businesses acting as businesses, not as charitable givers, are arguably the most powerful force for addressing many of today's most pressing issues. Here's our opportunity. Wouldn't it be amazing if 10 years from now or 5 years from now, we look back and we saw that the turning point for this country maybe got started by, Prime Minister Modi and our government leaders, but the real turning point was what you guys did, what the business community did, what you took on, how you changed your mindset, how you became really a world leader in creating shared value. That's not just a dream. That can really happen. But it's all about ideas, it's all about how you think about it, it's all about how you define your role, it's all about how you approach the social issues around you. Hopefully this is a beginning to think about that. Okay? So let's open it up for discussion.